Before we run too late. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency meeting for October 8th. We have a quorum, so let's go ahead and do introductions for the record. And I'm going to start with Dave.
Good morning, Dave Tobin, Pacific County Commissioner.
Joan? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Joan Cathy, Tumwater City Council.
Georgia?
Georgia Miller, Grace Harbor County Commissioner.
Mike?
Mike French, Clallam County Commissioner.
Randy?
Randy Netherland, Mason County Commissioner.
Emily?
Emily South, Thurston County Commissioner.
Okay, I think that's the board. Mike, would you walk us through the staff team?
I will. Good morning, y'all. In here, we'll start first. We'll go with around the table here. We've got Abby. She is engineer one. She's gonna be part of a presentation today. We've got Debbie. You guys know her. You see her all the time, program manager. Tiffany, she's the records specialist. I'm filling in for Jeff today. Odell Hadley, our senior air monitoring specialist. And then over there in the corner, we have Lauren, and she will engineer too, and she'll be involved in the presentation later with Abby. Upstairs, we have Chris Kraus. He is our IT systems administrator. We have, of course, Dan Nelson running all the Zoom stuff that he has to run up there, and listening in is Jennifer DeMay, the engineer supervisor. I hope I caught everybody. I'm not sure Brian heard this.
I'll get him, yeah.
Yeah, somebody else just came in.
Okay, so let me come back around. I see Nick. Nick, you're just in time to introduce yourself.
Nick Dunning, City of Lacey.
Okay, great. Jeff, would you introduce your team?
Jeff Myers from Law Lyman Legal Counsel and Jakob Kosters.
Great. And then the only other person on the meeting that I see is Chief Hurley. Would you like to introduce yourself?
You bet.
Second favorite fire chief.
Yeah. Brian Hurley, Fire Chief Tumwater, and I'm also president of Thurston County Fire Chiefs Association.
Welcome. Thanks for being here. Okay, so I'm looking for an approval of our agenda for today. Is there a motion?
I also move.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by Dave and a second by Mike. Any amendments? Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Let's see, so that takes us to a chair report. We don't have a finance report, and Greg sends his regrets. I should have said he's excused for this meeting. He's in another meeting, I think. But two items that I wanted to lift up. So Jeff wanted me to remind you all to take a look at the agenda planner that's in the agenda documents that Debbie sent us, so you can see what's coming up and pay attention, especially to the fact that we are trying to have an in-person meeting in December. So it's been a little over, actually about a year and a half since we've had an in-person meeting by then. And so we'd really like to try and get folks together. There will be one thing happening at that meeting that might interest you in coming, is that right before that meeting, I'm going to resign as the chair of the ORCAA Board so that we can elect new leadership and not leave the air agency in a lurch without a chair and vice chair after my departure on December 31st. So would love to have you here for that, but I also understand that it's a little bit far away. In conjunction with that meeting, maybe on the same day, maybe not, but we're still working and hoping that it could be on the same day. Odell and Dan and Jeff are working on trying to have a field trip out to the new shelter at Mountain View Elementary, so that we can see that space and see the great air monitoring work that's happening for our entire region there. Anything else I should say? Okay, perfect. Jeff asked me to remind people what's happening in November in his email, but I don't remember anything that's happening in November to remind you about. Oh, the second part
Of the outdoor
will be the second part of the outdoor burning conversation. And so just a reminder to encourage your staff that if they'd like to pay attention to this meeting, they're welcome to tune in. And it's being recorded on Zoom. So I'm sure if you reach out to Dan, you can probably get an easy link to that. Or Debbie to pass along to your staff team. So
And
Any questions?
in November, we'll also have, we've postponed the focus on Pacific County to November.
got it. Thank you. Good reminder. So we'll learn a whole bunch about Pacific County. Okay, so that takes me to public comment. Not to put you on the spot, Chief Hurley, any comments you'd like to make?
None this morning. Thank you for asking, though.
Great, thank you. And that takes us to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to
of the consent
approve the
agenda.
consent agenda.
Got like a whole bunch of motions. I need a second now, please.
Second,
Okay, I'm gonna give it to Dave for the motion and Randy for the second. Are there any questions, comments, or polls? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay, great. Now we're going to move to our presentations. We'll have two today. The first one is on outdoor burning, and I'm just gonna turn them both over to you and have you tee them up.
Okay, as we talked about, as Jim talked about a minute ago, we're gonna do some outdoor burning, in-depth stuff in November, because we want Jeff here, our fearless leader. But this, meeting, we're gonna go over just an introductory to the program, where the rules come from and whatnot. So I'll just start right in there, and Dan's prepared some slides for us. This will be an introductory part to our outdoor burn program. General overview, and then next month, we're gonna get into some details, answer some, maybe some more detailed questions.
Dan, we see the presenter side of that.
Okay, let me swap that.
There you go.
Very perfect. And we'll go to, well,
I think it's zoomed in.
It did. Somehow it's, there you go.
there you go, perfect. Okay, well, we all start with the RCW and the number up there. I won't read all the numbers. You guys have them in your packet and all, but the first one gives us the authority to implement a burn program. And it goes into some details in there about it. It tells us we do have some limits. But it directs us for the air program. So then we jump down to the next RCW. And it gives us a little more details into establishing the rules and to carve out some exemptions for agriculture. But in essence, it's still kind of just a repeat of the first rule that says, hey, we have a program. We don't do it, ecology's got to do it, and then DNR's got to do some forest stuff. So that will take care of the RCW. Then we jump to the WAC. Dan, next slide, yeah, so the state WAC, as you can see in there, it outlines our permit program. Agencies may use verbal, electronic, written, or general permits. And basically, the general permits is what we would call a general rural permit, and that's what covers the residential burn throughout our area, except for those locations that issue a permit, Thurston County and McCleary right now. The rest of the counties, they are burning under what's considered a general rural permit. The rural is follow the WAC and follow ORCAA's regulations. The second WAC up there, 430, it again goes into some agriculture burning, some of the effects of how they run that program. And it will also tell us that, we use this permit, or also you could call it a notification, to educate people to the program and to what the conditions are. So that's the WAC. So then you jump from the WAC to ORCAA rules. As you can see, we're stepping down. And in ORCAA, we have, as it says right there in our rule 6.2, we want to maintain air quality, good levels. We want to minimize to the best extent we can, the burning of outdoor fires, so that we're not creating undue emission issues. Consistent with this policy, the board has said we should only allow burning on a limited basis under strict regulations and close control, and that's what we have put into the permits in the Thurston County and McCleary permit, and also in the general rural, we have conditions that will allow that to happen. It also goes a little bit further, which isn't on here. And the board, when this was adopted, this part of it also, the next paragraph of that rule 6.2 introduction, that's not on here, but it says the board encourages the development of alternative technology or methods of disposing natural vegetation as long as it's economical and less harmful to the environment. Example, chipping, composting, etc. So I tee that up because that is how we drive this outdoor burn program, is we want to look for other mechanisms. There's actually a thing in the state WAC that says every 3 or 5 years, you're supposed to look for those alternative mechanisms and methods. And, you know, if you have those, you can stop burning. And so the board a while back, I know not all the members here, but that was put in specifically to address that we want to continue to improve and look for ways to reduce burning. Next permit, please, Dan. Then we have Clallam and Jefferson County. We're just gonna go through the counties real quick because they're all a little bit different, and sometimes that makes a message a little bit difficult, but Dan does a good job trying to search through all the different counties as to who's got a burn ban when and where. Starting with Clallam and Jefferson County, we do the land clearing burn permits for those counties and the agriculture permits for those counties. Excuse me, and the ceremonial permits for those counties. The residential permit for those counties is what's the general rule. It's just basically the WAC and ORCAA's rules, conditions. There are a couple fire districts in Jefferson County that do their own land clearing burn permits, and we've got an agreement with them, but I think there's only one of them right now. And we have several throughout, and we'll go into them in the different counties, memorandum of agreement or memorandum of understandings that we can write with the fire districts if they want to take over the program from a residential standpoint and a land clearing standpoint. Okay, next one, Dan, please. Grays Harbor County. They have a lot of territory to cover, lots of areas to burn. Of course, the Quinault's up there, and so is the national park. But again, they fall under the general rule. We don't have permits in Grays Harbor for residential except for McCleary and Fire District 12, which is the outside of McCleary. We have an agreement with them that they will do the residential burning permits, just like we do in Thurston County. The rest of the county, no residential permit needed. That's the general rule. Like I said, we still do the land clearing, the agriculture, and ceremony. When I say ceremonial, pretty much it's Native American tribes. They can do some of their ceremonial fires, but they need a permit from us so we know what's going on. And I guess training fires too. Fire departments, if they do training fires, we require a notification and or a permit for that also. And that'd be in all counties. So Mason County, now they're unique in that we've got an agreement with the fire marshal in the county and the county commissioners there that the fire marshal will issue all the land clearing burns in the whole county. So they issue all the land clearing burns. The general rural burns are the way they do residential burns. And then of course, ORCAA does agriculture and ceremonial fires in that area. So they, as part of the land clearing burn permits, we have agreements with these counties that they will assist and help with complaint response also. So that's because they're getting a little bit of money from land clearing burning, and hopefully that money can help go out and help us on complaints. Last one, I guess we have 2 more counties. Pacific County. Some fire districts manage their own burn. Burn permits, the one that does it is Pacific County Fire District number 1, or local, sometimes known as Ocean Park Fire District. So basically the Long Beach Peninsula from the Long Beach city line up north, and then part of East Seaview. They take care of that program. And they issue the land clearing and residential and respond to complaints. Been really good with us working on that because they're a long way from us to go down for complaints. So it's nice to have that agreement in place. The rest of the county, we do all the land clearing, agriculture, and ceremonial burns, and the residential burns are general rule. And the last one now, I think, Thurston County. Thurston County, as we mentioned before, they have a residential permit. It's managed by ORCAA. It was developed in 2004 with the Thurston Outdoor Burn Committee. It's one that they go through our internet. When they go into our website, they can enter it. It's a free permit, we like to call it notification too, because really we're not approving them, they apply, it goes back out to them and it lists a bunch of conditions they have to follow that match our county, our rule and match the state WAC for conditions, so. But that's the same, thing that McCleary has, same type of permit. So that's the difference with Thurston counties, they do the whole thing, we do land clearing act, and they've said that already. And after that, I just want to mention that with all of that being said, some of these areas you can't do residential, and that's what we'll get into next time with UGAs and stuff. We can go deeper into the rules. But generally that's a quick rundown. What we would like to do, Jeff wanted to make sure specifically that we want to know what information the board wants us to talk about. UGAs, permits, notifications. What do you guys want us to talk about in November? And what further discussion do you think we need to have to dive deeper into our rules, talk about everyday issues with burns, burn bans? We want some feedback from the board as to what and how deep to dive in November.
Okay. Questions for Mike or comments and thoughts as we plan the presentation for November? Georgia.
If it's all right, can I email and get back to you? Because like I put in the chat here, I did have the staff.
Lost.
But
Georgia, you cut out right in the middle of that. We didn't hear anything after staff
Oh.
member, but then you came back. Go ahead.
Can you hear now?
Yes.
Okay. A staff member wanted to be here today. If I could email you some thoughts after this meeting, the recording from today, that would be awesome.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and Georgia, I will do a separate video breakout of just this discussion so it's easier to find for your staff.
Perfect. Thank you.
And the other thing, just to note, please go ahead and familiarize yourself with ORCAA Rule 6.2 and have your staff look at that. That's our primary chartering authorization for a lot of this. And then just as an aside, note that we are still in burn bans in many of our areas. They're fire safety burn bans, not ORCAA burn bans. So I've been in touch with a lot of our fire officials throughout all 6 counties, and some counties I know, Pacific, Grace Harbor, Clallam, have all lifted their residential burn bans. Thurston, in conversation with the staff at Thurston County Fire Marshal's office, likely to see that lifted on Friday this week. But ORCAA rules say no land clearing burns until the DNR fire safety drops to low, or fire risk status drops to low. And that's for the entire county. So for instance, Grace Harbor County, the west side has dropped to low, but the east side in the South Puget Sound region of DNR is still at moderate. So we are not issuing land clearing burns at that point. So lots of regulations and rules covering outdoor burning. So hopefully we can keep addressing these and get everybody on the same page.
Great.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If you think about, comments or questions you may have, by all means, send us an email, send it to Jeff or to me or to Dan, and we'll try to make sure we hit those points in November.
Okay.
There's a lot of nuances with outdoor burning, as Dan's gone over some of them. So if you have some questions, concerns, just shoot us an email. We want to address your concerns and your questions.
So I want to just request, Dan, when you send stuff out, can you send this slide deck? So we have the RCW numbers and links along with the recording link to the whole board.
I certainly can do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'll put together an email later today or tomorrow with the specific parts of the board meeting as well
Thank
as
you.
the slide deck.
Appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to go to Randy and then Mike.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, could you make sure that staff also sends anything that Grace Harbor sends over, that they also send it to me in Mason County so that I can read it and look over it as well, please?
Okay.
I'll send it to the full board.
Thank you.
But I think I hear Randy saying he wants to know what Georgia says. So Georgia, will you CC Randy on your email to the staff? Okay, Mike.
Okay, so
two questions or thoughts for next month. One is, what are the common enforcement actions or complaints that we usually get regarding residential burning? So what are the things that cause ORCAA to do something when it comes to residential burning? That would be helpful information just to have an overview of, what's the work look like. And then two, on Rule 6.2, there's the bottom section that talks about the residential burning, and it says where residential burning is allowed and no written burn permits are issued, burning must abide by Rule 6.2 and the following, and then it has five requirements. Do we think we need to change those requirements? Is there a recommendation from staff? Are we happy with what the current state of that, that list is or not?
Can you read that real quick, just for the benefit of everyone else?
One, the maximum pile size is 4 feet in diameter and 3 feet high. Two, only one pile may be burned at a time. Each pile must be extinguished before lighting another. Three, only natural vegetation may be burned. Four, no fires are to be within 50 feet of structures or within 500 feet of forest slash. And five, no tree stumps may be burned. And so a follow-up to that is, do we think when generally people are doing residential burning, are they following those rules? That's another question. So three things.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that. Those are some good questions, because there are some nuances to get even with those. So yeah, we'll go into that, and very good point. So I'll make sure I talk to Jeff and we'll cover those next month.
Great questions. Back to Georgia.
What's the thought process of not burning stumps? Because I'm convinced that a lot of
I'm gonna read your lips because you cut out. You're convinced
Oh,
that a lot of
gosh,
people are
yeah.
burning stumps.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Well, and just briefly to address that right here is, you can burn stumps, but they require a land clearing burn permit, so they will require a bigger permit, because they're basically smolder and burn a lot. They're bigger than 4 feet if you put some together, and they also are gonna create a lot more smoke. So you can burn stumps, but that is required with a land clearing burn permit as opposed to the residential permit that Mike talked about. The 5 points he gave were just strictly related to the residential burn permit, not the land clearing burn.
Is there any size restriction, or is it any stump whatsoever?
I was just gonna ask the same exact
Well,
question.
There are some judgment calls,
Okay,
but because the land clearing burn would I'm jumping into November, but it'll be anything over 4 feet, because the state those rules that Mike French mentioned, those are all out of the state WAC, so we can't be any less strict than those. So if you had a 3-inch stump, we're gonna consider it not a land clearing burn permit, but land clearing burn permit says any clearing of property. So if you've got a whole bunch of small poplars that all have, stumps that are 12 inches, that's still gonna be land clearing, because you're clearing the property for other uses, and we'll get more into that detail next month. So that's where the judgment comes in. Yeah, you can put a stump in there if it's, a little poplar or alder, but if you're clearing the property, that's another reason that it falls into the land clearing burn, not the residential burn.
clear as mud. Okay,
Yeah.
Randy.
Yeah, Georgia, just to let you know, as it's coming in and out, the gosh damn it came in clear.
Yeah, I think my question was similar to the one that Mike was asking around whether those things were regulatory, like, requirements from the state. So I think that's a nuance. It'll be interesting to see if there's, frankly, are there other air rules that we should be modeling off of or looking at and comparing to, is where my mind goes when Mike asks that question also.
One of the things will be, if you're familiar with Thurston County and McCleary, they have a 10-foot residential burn permit pile. That was established back in 2004. That will be a question at some point. Everybody else is required 4 feet, because that's what the state rule is. But the state rule says if you have a permit program, which we do in Thurston County, you can make a larger pile. So that's why Thurston County does 10. But is that really what we want if we're reducing pollution, or should we put it to 4? Those are issues that we'll continue to have to beat around and make decisions on as we expand and educate.
Okay. Other questions? So I just want to make sure Dave or Nick or Joan, any additions? And I would just offer the same to Chief Hurley. I'm going to just give you the extension of Councilmember Kathy for this, if you have anything that you'd like to ask. So go ahead, Joan.
I just wondered on top of state and county, different cities have burn ban requirements?
The cities, some of them do, especially in Grays Harbor, Aberdeen, hopefully in Cosmopolis, they have some special rules. Sometimes, homeowners associations will have their own rules. We don't enforce on those, but we try to work in parallel with those, and we won't, like we know Port Ludlow Estates is one I can think of. They have a thing where they don't want land clearing burning in there. So we do not allow land clearing burning in Port Ludlow Estates, because that's their homeowner association rules that have been there for years. So we work with them, but we can't enforce anything that is not strictly with our rules. So the counties, cities can do their own rules also.
But on noting that state law does prohibit outdoor burning other than recreational fires in any city or urban growth areas if you're a growth management county. So Grays Harbor is not a growth management county, so that's why they have special dispensation to set their own rules. But every other city and county or every city and urban growth area, no residential or land clearing burning is allowed.
Not that they like the smell of the mill better. Okay. Good question, Joan. Anything else? Chief, anything you want to add or ask?
No, not really. I saw the agenda item and was just curious, much of this is already permitted in Thurston County. I was curious about expansion to other counties. So just trying to keep up to speed for our Chiefs Association. We have Dan at all our meetings to keep us updated anyway, and we appreciate that.
That's great. Thanks for that. We appreciate it.
And I will add that, I've been attending the Chiefs meetings since joining ORCAA in 2004, and they were instrumental in that. Mike mentioned the Thurston Outdoor Burn Committee. That was ORCAA, the chiefs, the fire commissioners, the county, Capcom or TCOM now, it was Capcom way back when, and DNR all got together and came up with the Thurston County burn permit program, and it's been very successful for 22, 24 years now. So really appreciate the cooperation and openness of the Fire Chiefs Association.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on this issue? All right, so next month we'll hear some more and maybe have a little bit of a policy conversation about where we want to go next. I think staff are taking all this feedback and trying to, adjust in real time based on all of our feedback, which is really great to see, and it's hard work. So thank you for that. Mike.
Not on this issue, but moving forward, we have budget meetings happening right now. I wanted to make sure if I left, I wasn't causing a quorum conflict here or issue.
Yeah, we're okay.
Okay.
But that means everyone else needs to stick around until after we look at the outdoor burn penalty matrix. So no one else is trying to leave real quick. Okay.
You might want to, if you want to move that up as the next item, I can stay for it.
Yeah, we can do that and then have the inventory afterwards.
Okay. Is the board okay with that slight modification to the agenda? Anybody concerned? So we can deal with the actions that need to be taken care of? Okay. So Mike, we're going to move to new business item 1 around the outdoor burning penalty matrix.
See how I can work on the fly here.
Thank you.
We can do this.
We'll give you a good review to Jeff.
Oh, thank you. Then I definitely will do it. How much is it gonna cost me?
Right.
All right, so, in your packet, you've got a briefing memo that, and we're asking the board, when I'm done with it, to take some action to approve a outdoor burn penalty matrix, penalty worksheet. We use these tools, we have them for all the different enforcement actions. We only want to deal with outdoor burning today. It's to ensure, the tool is to ensure non-compliance is recognized, to ensure that there's, motivation for people not to break the rules, and to ensure there's no economic benefit for those who want to ignore the rules. So with that, we want to use the worksheets and make sure that they are fair, they're consistent with other similar violations. And in March, some of you remember of 2024, we came to you with this major penalty worksheet, also asbestos penalty worksheet, and several others. This one, it has turned out that, you know, through all those, we didn't focus on the dollar amounts because we left those the way they were. We thought they were working well, but we focused on getting more flow and consistency. So we did that. The board approved all the different worksheets. And now over a year and a half or so, we have found that this outdoor burn one, has led to some penalties that escalated quicker than we thought, than we desired on the individuals. We also found that we don't get as much payment return on the very high ones. So maybe we need, you know, so was it really worth it to hit them that far? If it's too big, they just kind of opt out, say, I can't pay, forget it, I'm out of here, do what you gotta do. Whereas the smaller ones, they do payments or they pay, we get a better return. So, and then I checked with the other air agencies, and the high end, we were higher for first time violators. So we took that information back. We're asking you to approve this new penalty matrix. You have the red line penalty worksheet. But our goal is, and we believe strongly that it'll cost the violators less money, so they'll still have a penalty, but it'll be less. It'll make it easier for violators to pay ORCAA, because again, it will be less. It's still gonna be reasonable and effective. It may result in less penalties going to collections also, because they will be something that they can work out a payment with us instead of just saying, hey, that's beyond anything I can do, I'm out. And we also think there won't be much of an impact, if any, to the budget, because a lot of the 5,000 and above ones end up going to collections, and then we don't see any money on those, or we see them a long way out. And when we get to the new penalty worksheet, you'll see the 5,000 ones we're asking to reduce those down to a little more manageable one, you know, 4, and some other ones I'll go over briefly. So we're hoping that if you guys have looked at the worksheet, we haven't changed much. There was a couple questions right before the little table we have that talks about what they're burning down on question number 5. You know, right there where Dan's cursor is. That question number 5, the old 5, was kind of irrelevant. It said, did you follow the permits? Well, if you follow the permit conditions, you wouldn't have a violation. We wouldn't be out there. So we decided that really doesn't make any sense. It's redundant. We got that out, then I changed the number to number 5. As you can see in number 5, we just kind of highlighted a little bit more what the garbage was, household garbage, some of the things that the board wanted, the PCHB board wanted to know what type of prohibitives were there. We didn't do any other changing other than the final, if Dan could go down to the penalty matrix table. If you see from the number 17 out, or $2,500 out, we changed the numbers to have a 4-number spread, 4 points for each of them. That wasn't the case. For whatever reason, we had 4 numbers or penalty points up to 16, and then we made it smaller as you went higher. And of course, that escalated the penalties. We, again, didn't think they were reasonable always at the top end, so we expanded the number score. Every category has 4 points, and as you can see, we reduced the 5,000 down to 4,000, the old 10,000 down to 6,000, and we added a 10,000 category that was higher than the old one. And of course, we still have the far end, which would mean you'd have to really do a lot of bad things to get to that far end on a first penalty matrix. Most of these, when we did a cross check, Debbie did a real good thing to check back and forth, and we looked at that, and it seems like most of the first time offenders will be 4,000 and less. I mean, again, you can hit the top, but you really got to work at it. Huge piles, lots of bad stuff. You've been talked to before, you know, there's a lot of reasons, but it's gonna be very hard to hit the top. We're right with the way it was the old one. People, we routinely saw $10,000 get hit, and just feel that that's not reasonable. So we're asking the board to take a look at this, approve this, because we think, again, it's going to be more fair to the individuals. It will be easier for us to collect, and we'll be more in line with all the other air agencies for first time burn violators.
Okay. Question?
Yeah.
Questions for Mike? Oh, that's good. Thank you, Dan. Now I can see you. Anyone have any questions or clarifications for Mike?
I mean, this seems reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah, I dug in with staff last week on it and asked a bunch of weird questions and they really were good at defending them. So I think the thing that's really great for me is just the ability to not hit people with a larger fine and then that's just more in alignment with our customer service mentality. Okay, you're not seeing a lot of questions. So is there anyone that'd like to make a motion to approve the revised outdoor borne penalty worksheet?
So
I move to revise the outdoor penalty worksheet.
Okay, so we got Emily in the room.
And I will second.
Okay, and Dave, sorry, Mike, you're trying to leave and you want to don't even get a motion. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you. Appreciate that, and I think the citizens will appreciate that too.
Thanks, Mike, for sticking around for that. Okay, so we're gonna go back to the introduction to emissions inventories.
Yes, our staff does a great job in doing emission inventories for several facilities. I won't steal their thunder. We have Lauren Wydrew and Abby Roberts, two engineers that do the emission inventory. And I'm just gonna stay back and let you guys do your thing.
Okay. Dan, if you're willing to pull up our slides, so I think you've got the notes view. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so I'm Lauren, and Abby is joining me. So we both work on the emissions inventory along with some other ORCAA staff, as you're gonna hear. We're both also permit writers, so we're a small agency. We wear a lot of hats. And today we thought we'd give a very broad overview. We don't have a lot of time. So it's a very broad overview of first, what is an emission inventory? What is the framework of the emission inventory in the regulatory community? And hopefully it kind of sets the stage so that if you want to explore other topics that we briefly touch on today and take a deeper dive, that's why we've titled it Part 1. So we could come back at any future board meetings and dive into any other topics that we have more time for.
Next slide. So the basis of the emission inventory is pollutants. And as a clean air agency, we're concerned with improving air quality from the standpoint of the Clean Air Act, specifically the National Ambient Air Quality Standards and the acceptable concentration limits for human health that were set by the Clean Air Act. So the criteria pollutants are those listed below. We also care about volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. These are important because they're regulated as they are precursors to ozone and secondary aerosol organic compounds, which means they're a precursor to particulate matter. Additionally, on emission inventories of various levels, we have the federal hazardous air pollutants that are included. There are about 188 of those. There are the state toxic air pollutants, and then there are greenhouse gases. We're not going to talk about greenhouse gases much today because ORCAA does not collect that information. That's something collected by the Department of Ecology. If the board's interested in that, though, we can reach out to the ecology and have them come in and talk about it. Next slide, please. So now that we've talked about pollutants, what are the sources of the pollutants? Typically, we think of vehicles and combustion, but that's only one small part of it. We also have point sources. These are large industrial facilities, things like Crown, Cork, and Seal. We have non-point sources. These are smaller industrial facilities or small commercial, things like auto body shops or gasoline dispensing facilities. We have on-road sources like cars and trucks. Non-road sources, these things are like trains, buses, off the road type equipment. We have biogenic sources, which are natural, like soil microbes and things from trees, or the emissions from soil microbes. And then we have event-driven sources like wildfires. Next slide, please.
So now that you know what the pollutants are and what the sources are, it's not all just manufacturing. I mean, we talk a lot about industrial sources here. It's a wide variety of sources you wouldn't even think of. Now you know everything that goes in the inventory. We want to dive into what an emission inventory is comprised of. So emission inventory, it's a giant listing of, usually by source category that Abby just mentioned, of all the pollutants, the criteria pollutants, the HAPs, everything she just mentioned that are actually discharged. And Dan, I think I got an animation on this slide if you can click it. The main point I want to drive home today is that an emission inventory is not based on air quality monitors. So the ambient air quality monitors, such as like what Odell talks about at the board meetings, that's used to measure directly what's in the air. And it will tell you if you're exceeding a national ambient quality standard. Is a direct measurement of what is in the air currently. Emission inventories are based on data that is entirely different. It uses no data from those monitors. Instead, it's built kind of from, I think there's like a ground up based approach where reported emissions from the individual sources, like the factories, the cars, the wildfires, and that data is collected then to give overview of what are the contributions to the overall pollution levels that we are seeing in the ambient air monitoring data. The calculations that are done based on that reported information, it uses a variety of tools. There are air quality models, there's published emission factors, it relies on information like population, land use area, the amount of registered vehicles on the road. It's very comprehensive and time consuming to compile them. But I think that's the main thing I want, if you walk out of here remembering absolutely nothing, I want you to remember this, that emission inventory is not what Odell talks about. That's something completely different. And the emission inventory in that sense can then be used as a really nice diagnostic tool, which we'll get into a little bit later. So emission inventories are done on different scales, national, state, and local. We kind of went back and forth the best way to introduce this. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with the largest, the national emission inventory. If you want to advance to the next slide, Dan, and then kind of whittle our way down from the largest down into what ORCAA does.
So the National Emission Inventory is completed every 3 years, and it includes all criteria pollutants and hazardous air pollutants. Because an emission inventory is built from the ground up, it includes information from state, tribal, and local agencies like ORCAA. As you can see from this graphic, it's pretty comprehensive. It includes like the stationary and mobile sources we talk about. If you look over to the far left, you'll even see lightning, which is a contributor to nitrogen oxides. We also include point source hazardous air pollutants. Next slide, please. So Washington State does 3 different emission inventories. They do the comprehensive emissions inventory that Lauren's going to talk about in a minute, the greenhouse gas inventory that I mentioned earlier, and then a point source emission inventory. Next slide, please.
So the comprehensive emission inventory is done by the Department of Ecology every 3 years. It includes all criteria, some hazardous air pollutants, and even ammonia. It is from all source types of pollution. So what Abby talked about earlier, cars, wildfires, industrial sources, that whole gambit. And when it's done every 3 years, it is in line with the National Emissions Inventory. So EPA does their National Emission Inventory every 3 years. This Department of Ecology does theirs that same every 3 years. That pie chart on the left is just a really quick snapshot of the most recent comprehensive emissions inventory. It's 2020 air emissions, so that means the air emissions that were emitted during calendar year 2020, even though it ends up getting published like in, I think, 2023 or so. This is just a really quick overview of all of Washington State, and each color a different pollutant. So carbon monoxide, volatile organic compounds, the orange and kind of lighter blue you see there, that is the majority of the emissions in the state for that calendar year. Next slide, please.
Lauren, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Is the national inventory sewing up 50 states and the territories, or is it actually doing its own work?
It sews up. So we'll get into a little bit, but ORCAA does its own emission inventory, and then we report the emissions from our industrial sources to EPA through a database. And then ecology will pull that information that we've reported from EPA to come up with some of the numbers here.
Okay.
And then EPA will use those to come up with the NEI. It's just that we live, or we being ORCAA, live in a very small snippet of what the NEI and the comprehensive emission inventory does, because we only do the large industrial like point sources. So we contribute to it in that way.
We don't
and they
give them
sew it up.
mobile source data, someone else
Uh,
does or whatever.
Kind of, we can, sometimes the Department of Ecology or EPA will ask us for information, because we have information on things like land clearing burns and land clearing permit data. And they'll ask us for that we being ORCAA won't actually do the calculations, EPA or the Department of Ecology will, but they'll use the information that we have in our house for them to do that.
Awesome,
So,
thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Dan. Okay, so going down one more level, what was in that pie chart? Pie chart was just different pollutants on the state level. But I want to go down one more level and look by county. And I picked PM 2.5 just because it was kind of the most interesting out of the ones when I looked at the different pollutants. Down on the bottom, you can see we've sorted the pollutants by each of our 6 counties and they're stacked bar charts. So each color represents a different source type of pollution. When I say different source type, you can see some of the labels there: residential wood combustion, residential outdoor burning, wildfires. I just wanted to highlight some of the key ones. And as you can see, I thought it was kind of interesting. So that lime green there, the residential wood combustion, in each of the counties, that comprises, or that accounts for the majority of the PM 2.5 emissions contribution for each county. In a place like Mason County, it's over 60% of the PM 2.5 emissions for calendar year 2020 comes from residential wood combustion. And when I say residential wood combustion, that's a term that's defined by the Department of Ecology, who puts together this information. So it's things like wood stoves, fireplaces inserts, pellet stoves, but it doesn't include things like fire pits. Like fire pits, they have as part of the residential outdoor burning, the magenta there. So the Department of Ecology does a really good job of defining each little category, and that's just a really quick snapshot. And although we don't make this product and we don't do the calculations, as I said earlier, we'll give them information as they need it, like land clearing burn or things like that. But I think it's worth noting that even though we don't do the actual calculations, our staff lives in these, like wildfires. That keeps Odell and Dan pretty busy during that season. The residential wood combustion, residential outdoor burning, that has our inspectors busy every day. Next slide, please.
What's the yellow?
The yellow, ooh, I will get to that.
Okay, cool.
The yellow is the point sources. So now that you've gotten an overview of the different types of sources that are included in the national and the state inventories, I want to focus more in on the point sources right there, when you think of the big, large industrial manufacturing facilities. So next slide. And I think there's an animation on this one, Dan. The yellow. So those are the large point sources, same stat bar chart that you just saw for PM 2.5 by county, but wanted to highlight the large point sources because that is where ORCAA staff lives. When we do our emission inventory, we are focusing only on the point sources as far as calculating the emissions and reporting the emissions to EPA for their use and sewing up the NEI.
So Lauren, does that county include state regulated facilities like Fort Townsend paper?
This particular chart does. I
And
believe so,
that's
yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Man, you guys are like 70 on the hard play. Next slide.
Right, so, as you can see here, this is a map of all the large point sources in Ecology's emission inventory. Most of these are AOP sources, so some of the sources you mentioned. You can see the different types of industries that are highlighted by color at the bottom. And then if you go to the next slide, please, Dan. This is ORCAA's emission inventory. We capture more than Ecology's. We have AOP sources. So sources with an air operating permit, but we also include registration classes 1, 2, and 3. So synthetic miners and those with potential to emit greater than or equal to 10 tons per year or more. We can also request RC4 and RC5 information if we think it's significant, and that may be like they have a small amount of emissions, but those are quite toxic. But we haven't had any of those on the emission inventory for several years. On this map, there's about 70 to 90 of our sources that report for the emission inventory. There's 75 on here. They're a little bit hard to see because they're close together, but that's out of about 700 registered sources that we get the data for. We collect criteria pollutants, as I mentioned earlier, toxic air pollutants and hazardous air pollutant information on an annual basis. And then you can see the industry type. The other category is things like cremation, medical facility, that type deal. Next slide, please. So the emission inventory is a big project. It's pretty much continuous. It's done primarily by Lauren, myself, Jennifer, and Jackie and Debbie, the different aspects. So in December, we prepare forms and we send those out. January, we mail the forms and we provide industry assistance. When sources receive those forms, they have 30 days from when they're received to submit that, unless they're an AOP source, and then those are all due on March 1st. February through June, Lauren, Jen, and I typically are reviewing the emission inventory, the data, and we're calculating emissions for sources that didn't calculate it themselves. August is billing for all of that, and then fall is the QA and reporting, and that's done by Jen, and she reports that to the EPA. for use and ecology for use in the state emission inventory as well as in the national emission inventory. Next slide, please.
So you know what an emission inventory is, and I want to dive in now to why are we going through all this effort? Why does EPA do this? Why does ecology do this? Why do we do this? Why is this work important? So in a general sense, it's used overall for air quality management, including planning and policy decisions and setting different priorities. For example, we can use it for air quality forecasting, where air quality monitors, such as the ones that Odell manages, where those should be cited. A specific example I can think of is air quality regulators use air quality models to take the data from the emission inventory that's reported and can calculate and use dispersion modeling to predict what the air is in an area for where there's no monitors, because it's impractical. We can't have, as much as we love it, we cannot have air quality monitors sited every square mile across the US. So there's a lot of places where air quality professionals have to use the emission inventory data to say, okay, where there isn't an air quality monitor, what is the state of the air? And they rely on this emission inventory data. Next slide, please. We can also use it for evaluating compliance with material use or emission limits that we write into the permits each day. I know I personally will use it sometimes to help guide my permitting decisions. If I think a facility might need an emission limit or a material usage limit, if I've got emission inventory data on the facility, you bet I'm looking at it to help guide my permitting decisions for whatever permitting action I'm looking for that facility. We use, as Abby mentioned, the data gets reported to EPA and ecology annually. We voluntarily report a little bit more than we're required to, mainly because we have the data and we want to give the data. If we don't, even though we're not required to, EPA can gap fill with their best estimates of the emissions, and I don't like doing that, so we try to give them all the information we can, so it's as accurate as possible. We also use the emissions data to assess fees in the air operating permit and registration programs. So for those facilities that are on the emission inventory, a part of the annual fees that they pay, there's a small slice that is directly billed to how many tons per year they emitted in the last calendar year. We also can look at emissions trends. I would love to spend more time in that world and looking at historical emissions data and emissions trends, but not as much time as I'd like in that area. And then we also use it for public information. So, I mean, I can think of one specific example where we got an odor complaint for one of our AOP facilities that never usually gets an odor complaint, a can manufacturing facility. And it's like, well, that's weird. First thing I did when the inspector said, well, I'm gonna go drive out there and do a drive-by, see what's up. First thing we did was pull up their emissions inventory. What was their emissions last year? What could be stinky? Well, you know, look at what the complainant was saying it smelled like and try to look at what pollutant that would be. So that way we can tell the inspector like, hey, this is, you know, ammonia related or sulfur oxide related. Go to this part of the facility or maybe guide your inspection for this drive-by to this area. It can also be useful as a diagnostic tool. I touched on this briefly earlier for if an area is in non-attainment. So Thurston County in the, help me out, Mike, was it 1980s, 1990s was in non-attainment? 80s. They're in non-attainment for, I think it was one of the PMs. I think it was PM 10. So particulate matter with 10 micrometers or smaller. The air monitor said, hey, we're in non-attainment. But then how do you get back into attainment? You got to come up with a plan of how you're going to come back into attainment. What do? What is contributing to that non-attainment? That's where the emission inventory comes in. We could see from the emission inventory that a main contributor was wood stoves and emissions from wood stoves. So that helped guide the policy and planning decisions to get back into attainment, to have a targeted strategy that ended up, you know, giving birth to things like the wood stove incentive programs and things like that to get us back into attainment. Next slide, please. So that was a very quick overview, 5,000 foot level view of just what an emission inventory is. If you have any questions, if we have time, we can probably try to answer some on the spot, but admittedly, as you saw, a lot of the emission inventory, national, comprehensive, it includes a lot more than just what ORCAA does. ORCAA just plays a small part in a much, much larger stage. So if there's more interest in things like greenhouse gas emissions, for example, or that inventory, I mean, we'd want to invite someone from the Department of Ecology to come in and talk about that, which we totally can do.
Okay, great. So let's see, questions or things you'd like to learn about more in the future? And I'm gonna start with Emily, because I just realized I neglected her in the last conversation, because I wasn't looking through Mike and noticing she was there. So-
I'm pretty thick, I know.
But I also know she would have spoke up if she had something to say, so.
Yeah, no, definitely, thank you. I did not have questions about the last one, but I do have a question about this one. We went over point sources a little bit quick, and I was just wondering if you could kind of do another quick rundown of that, because I thought I heard you say that that was the only one that ORCAA measures. Was that right?
It's the only, point sources are the only ones that we have on our emission inventory, and that's largely because that's the only one we write permits for. That's what we do inspections for when it comes to things like emissions from cars and things like that. That's with the Department of Ecology, those offered emissions.
We know what they're permitted to and their actual,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Okay. And you had a slide, I think, that said what point sources are, right?
Yeah, and the,
Is
yes.
it the chemicals, production, energy, industry, equipment, manufacturing, that list?
Yep.
Okay.
That's it. That's, I mean, that's a very just kind of general sense. That's, if you think of point sources, think of facility manufacturing that has a giant stack usually.
Okay.
But it can also be like a composting facility. There is no
Yeah.
stack. But for the purposes of emission inventory world, it's considered a point source.
Yeah.
Because it's not a non-point being like the cars that move around. They
Okay,
aren't
that
just
makes
fixed in a location.
The
Okay.
one that was most surprising to me was coffee roasters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's a wide variety, and we don't have anything like gas stations or auto body shops currently in the emission inventory, just because their emissions are pretty small. But that's in general what ORCAA regulates and what we permit. It ranges from concrete batch plants to chemical manufacturing to gas stations to composting.
I think it's good to know, like, they had mentioned 72 or 75 emission inventory, and we have 700 roughly sources, so they're doing about 10% of our sources, so there's 90% of that we don't count every year on that emission
We
inventory.
just trust someone else's math.
Well, and they're the smaller sources, you know, they may add up to a lot, but they're the smaller sources.
Cool. Online, any questions or things you'd like to learn about in the future? Okay, well, I thought it was really valuable, and I hope that you get a chance to dig into historical emissions inventory trends in your career more. So.
I wanted to just add one thing that I think Lauren's aware of, but the National Emission Inventory goes into a global emission inventory, and it is heavily used by academic scientists to understand things like cloud processes and cloud aerosol interactions and just general science about our atmosphere. So it goes beyond the regulatory community and beyond the air quality community to the scientific community. And they really rely on those things being accurate, because that's what helps drive the models and helps drive the understanding of the science. And that's globally. I mean, everybody's contributing to those emissions on a global basis. So it ultimately makes its way up to some pretty high level stuff.
Big foundation. Yeah, that's great.
I have one more thing.
Go ahead.
I would be interested in a greenhouse gas inventory. If we could invite somebody to talk about that, I would really like that.
Yeah, I don't think we've had a call if you come and talk about that program that I can remember, so it'd be super cool.
Yeah, I don't see why it doesn't hurt to ask them.
Okay. Dan?
I'll just wanted to note that as with just about any of the special presentations to the board, I will pull this out as a separate video and post it to the ORCAA YouTube channel. So if you want to revisit it or have your staff look at it, you can certainly do that. So we've have that with our asbestos presentation from a year or so back with Bryson, and something we'll do with the outdoor burning presentation and with this one. So you can have a separate video you can just go straight to.
Thank you.
And maybe we can make Abby and Lauren viral social media mavens.
There you go. I think you have to start a TikTok to do that, Dan. So. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to our reports, and Mike is going to go ahead and do number 1, 2, and 5 up front, and then we'll go to Odell and Dan to take us home.
So I'll try to channel Jeff first. I'll have to change voices or something between everybody, I don't know. Jeff, notes, talking points, I think are in the packet, but I'll just highlight a few of them, so I won't go over all of them. But the database kickoff meeting, that, something we're all happy about. You know, we got a contract with the company, gonna start working on the, groundwork for them to start building us a new database, and we all can't wait, and there's several of the people attending this that are on the committee to go, so that's really cool. It's actually happening. After talking about it for a long time, we've got somebody. Jeff attached 2 policies to the board packet, sponsorship policy and AI policy. We've gone over that with staff. I think those are good policies. Those are new policies. And it's good to have those down, and, you know, if you want some more information on those, you know, feel free to shoot Jeff a call. I won't go over them. They're pretty simple but they guide us when we have those things going on. On the core grant and the EPA grant, federal core grant, state core grant, about 134,000, 139,000 for the 2 different ones. Again, it's in the packet, but no news on those. You know, we don't know, from the state. We hope we're still getting it, but, you know, until we get it, we don't know. They have some contingencies, Jeff and Tyson, for if we don't get them, what we do. And then, to support getting those core grants, Jeff has put together, and got the other air directors to sign it, 2 different letters, one going out to our congressional delegation and one to the park director of ecology, saying these things help finance some really valuable programs, and we would like to get the money and continue to use that money for valuable programs. So please, you know, get us the core grant. It's gonna be a little more tactful than that, but yeah, all the air agencies really rely on that, some more than others, and you know, that's basically over $300,000 for us to get both state and federal, and that's important. So those are yes.
I have a question about that. I remember at the last meeting hearing, and I know the federal financial landscape changes like by the minute, but I recall last meeting hearing that the revenue from the federal core grant was likely still gonna come in, and the state money was what we were concerned about, but now I'm hearing that we don't know about either. Is that right?
My understanding, this is what I've heard Jeff say, but Jeff has more up-to-date things. He's probably finding some stuff out about the federal stuff right now back in the NACA meeting, that we still think, and we've been told that we're gonna get that money, both of them, but, because it changes minute by minute, and whether he likes your state or not, and certain people do, we don't know. So, but yeah, I think the understanding is, it's still coming, but yeah, it's can't be too sure. That's all I'll say.
Okay, thank you.
Slightly related to this, how are we on federal billing, and what's our frequency with the shutdown? Is that something that we do monthly or quarterly? And how long before that impacts our cash flow?
No, that is I'm sorry, I can't answer that one. That's a Tyson, one. I have not heard of it causing a problem with.
Dan looks like he might have an answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we do quarterly requests for reimbursement from the feds. So
okay, so we have a minute.
That was in September, so we've got 3 months basically before we have to go back to them.
Thank you.
Generally speaking.
Okay,
And
great.
one more piece of that is that Ecology's Eagle program has been down for upgrades for the last 2 weeks, 3
At
weeks.
least 2 weeks.
So we haven't been able to do any drawdowns on our grants from the state either. But that's just because their program is going through a
They decided to replace their
modernization. I
software.
think it's modernization of the software.
That's the term they use, but I'm not.
But so, I mean, the money's still there. We'll get it. We just haven't been able to.
Ecology is open, they just have IT problems.
Well, no, it's not, it's
They're
a.
fixing,
it's
they're
a
fixing their.
organization, But we
Good.
just haven't been able to do any drawdowns.
Yes, okay, thank you for that. All right, I appreciate that expansion. Okay, so you're gonna keep rolling.
So I'll roll into number 2, which is compliance manager update, and I know a little bit more about that. At least I better. Some of the notes there, the engineers are working on several large AOP or Title V permits. Those are those big point sources. And they have to renew their permits every 5 years, and we've got several, and they're doing a great job trying to write those in. There's a lot of work because you gotta write all the federal rules into them and any of the smaller permits we put into them. So they're hard at work. We've got probably 5 of them, I think, out there right now that we have to do. And again, those are the 80-page plus permits. So they're busy working on those. Along with that, this summer, fall is when we go out and inspect those big sources. So the engineers and the inspectors go out and inspect those, and they're doing a great job. Takes like a whole day out there and then several hours and days looking at records. They're very thorough inspections of those Title V sources. We've actually had 3 asphalt plants do source testing, getting into what Abby and Lauren were talking about. The source testing, you gotta know what's coming out in the inventory, and the inventory we had on asphalt plants was very old. We decided, because we've heard from other air agencies, that the asphalt plants have really mixed emissions and they degrade over time. And we haven't had any of these asphalt plants test in several years, probably 10 or longer. So we sent them notice last year and said, we'll give you 2 years to test. You can work it out with your product and your purchases. But we need to get some new testing, new numbers on those because they're all old. And they have not been running probably as efficient as we would like. So that's why we've got, I think, 3 more that are gonna test next year. But I think we have 6 total. So anyway, that's been that'll give us some new data that we didn't have, and we will be able to, I believe they are on the emission inventory too, so we'll have some more up-to-date numbers. All staff in compliance, all inspectors, all engineers, because they go in the field and around hazardous chemicals, they have to get what we call HAZWOPER training, hazardous waste training and certification. They've all gone through that now except for one in December, and they gotta do that every year. So good for them to get that and stay up to date. They've all got it, like I said, except one in December. And then the last thing I wanna say here is that ORCAA is did participate in a stakeholder meeting about the jungle last week, where Jeff and Rob, the inspector supervisor, and a rep from OLIMAP and the director of Pacific Transit, director of Intercity. Thank you. I'm living here, so the Intercity Transit, they all met to go over the complaints of the jungle and what we can do, and so they're continuing to work on that process, and it basically shows a real good interconnection of all those different agencies. When you get OLIMAP involved, you get the transit people involved, ORCAA, a couple of them, Rob and OLIMAP people went out to the jungle, talked to some more people, and trying to get the complaints to go down. For good reason, because it is right next to the transit thing, and we have been getting a lot of complaints. It's getting colder, doing more burning because they're trying to stay warm and get rid of the garbage. So we are trying to do what we can to reduce that, but that's a much bigger problem than any one of these agencies.
It's also worth noting, City of Olympia and Thurston County were part of that discussion as well. They were in that meeting with us.
Thank you.
And ORCAA gave a purple air sensor to Intercity Transit, which they installed there 2 weeks ago.
Yes, yeah.
So, and we have that registered on the map, so we can actually look at that.
So we can see that, and we also have for the last year or the year before, and then this year, we're giving some money to that, to the OLIMAP group to help with different things. So, we definitely, want to spend some time trying to come up with solutions, because it is a, health issue and it is a time issue also. So that's the compliance part. Now I'll try to channel Tyson in the financial stuff. And again, his, same voice every time, sorry, I don't do voices well, so. So Tyson is out at the insurance group, AWC, and learning about the insurance stuff that's gonna be coming here in the open registration period. So that's why he's not here. He provided a pretty detailed summary of comments in your board packet. It's real detailed. I'll go over a couple little things in there. So not everything, but large capital expenditures were made in the first quarter of fiscal year 2026. So basically the last 3-4 months. They include fire and security panels. We've got new ones. So hopefully they won't bother Tyson in the middle of the night with alarms. I think they're working well from what I hear. And of course, if you don't know, we got a new fleet vehicle. it's an EV fleet vehicle, and we've also put in 2 charging units out back. It's, I think Jim has seen the vehicle, real nice EV, Nero. So those are the capital purchases. We are also, if there's anything with the Lacey monitoring shelter, I'll just let Odell talk about it when she gets to her stuff. I know there was some obligated money. I'm not sure where it's at with reimbursements. He's anticipating the health insurance provider to raise the rate 4 to 12% for medical and dental beginning January of 2026. He says nationwide insurance is expected to go up 9%, so we're gonna be in that ballpark somewhere that the agency will have to deal with and pay. But the agency's been very good about paying the employees' rate of that, to keep coverage on the employees and keep them, here, so they don't, wanna run someplace that does pay all the cost. So the agency's doing their best with that. And then he had again, other little things, but there was something on the maintenance of the building I wanna talk about. They've completed several major building projects. The security panels we talked about, also a new security system that provides better, coverage and, improved usability features. So that's a nice thing, as you know, we got a new EV out there and we've got some chargers. We don't want people coming around and doing some vandalism. And Robert, our maintenance guy, he replaced the floorings in Suite B, Unit 101 with some vinyl plank flooring. Looks really nice. Did a good job with that. And I'm gonna end it with that for Tyson. There's again, a few more things in the board packet, but that is 3 different departments in a quick nutshell. Questions that I may or may not be able to answer.
Good job, Mike. Questions for Mike? To make sure Robert is doing his honey-do list at home that he's supposed to do during retirement. Okay. All right, thank you, Mike. Let's go to Odell.
All right, Dan. Has slides. So I will start the presentation. I will go as quickly as I can, but August and September was a busy month for the monitoring crew, which is myself and Rob Weiland sometimes. So, and because we're covering August and September, yeah, it might just take a little bit longer, but our August data you can see looks pretty good. Shelton did get a few yellow days, and those were from the Bear Gulch fire that's burning up there by Lake Cushman, and it would drift down. We would have seen, if I had monitors on this, we do have purple airs and some sensors along Hood Canal, and we did see a lot more yellow and some orange and even red up around Hoodsport and north toward Brennan and Quilcene. The Yelm Senswa that we installed has continued having communication problems. I was out there yesterday with Rob. We replaced it with an updated modem, so we are hopeful, fingers crossed, that will continue to report in a more complete data set than what you see here for August. So, and then Lacey, you'll see data. If you remember, in July, we took the site down to prep for the new shelter, but we also installed a Senswa out there. And so those data on the Lacey site are from the Senswa and not from the BAM, which is the regulatory monitor that we typically have there. Okay, so next slide. So this is the September data. Oh, too far. This is the September data here. And so you'll start to see Aberdeen, Forks, our coastal sites were a lot cleaner. We did see a few yellow days in Thurston County or in Lacey. Port Angeles had a couple of yellow days there in the middle of the month. Port Townsend, the monitor went down at that time, may have seen some yellow days. We had some problems there that we went up and fixed. And then in Shelton, you'll see a nice red day that coincides with some green days in Lacey, and I'm going to talk about that later because that's a really interesting event that happened in September that many of you that live in the area will remember. And then the Yelm sensor, again, we saw a lot of yellow days out there and also some gray days because of communication problems. The Port Townsend, we just had this perfect storm of malfunctions, that just resulted in going up there with a member from ecology team and literally replaced every single component of the system, that all had problems at the same time. So it was kind of an interesting, loss of data there. So next slide. And then here's our ozone data. So this is August and September ozone. You'll notice it starts August 22nd. That is the day that we got the new shelter functioning with the monitors installed and operational. Although I did have a senswa for July and part of June for July and August, that first part of August for the PM 2.5, I didn't have a place to put the ozone monitors. So we didn't collect ozone data during all of July and the first part of August, which are typically when we would see the highest concentrations of ozone. So, it's not surprising that we're not anywhere close to the ambient air quality standard here, which is that top line of 0.07 parts per million. Next slide, please. So, there's a couple of just updates on the Lacey monitoring site. So shelter arrived on August 20th. You can see that picture there. We had a crane out there. It was very exciting. I almost felt bad that school wasn't in session, because I think the kids would have just had such a kick out of that. We got the shelter on August 20th. We moved all the analyzers into the new shelter on August 21st. We did get the ozone operational, but the site became fully operational on September 2nd. And then after that, we were actually able to do ozone and ethylometer audit. That's when ecology comes out and tests our instruments to make sure they're working to spec and the way that they should. And then the day after that, EPA came out to do an ozone audit as well. And so every 3 years, EPA will also audit the equipment to make sure that ecology is doing its job. So layers upon layers of checks. Next slide, please. So there's just some pictures of our new shelter, looking very beautiful and white and shiny. And then the inside there, you can see we have a new rack for our ozone analyzers and PM 2.5. The instrument you see on the roof, that's the BAM that I talk about, the regulatory PM 2.5 monitor. And then you'll see the candy cane structures. Those are all the inlets for all of the instruments that we have inside. And then of course the wind sensor that you see up there, which is our weather station. So that's the Lacey site that we're hoping to work with the school and get a date maybe in December or early January for you guys to all come out and visit it in person if you so desire. Okay, next slide. So let's go to Pahocus and the Chica sites. So we moved the trailers over there in July, which I think I told you about in August. And then we had to get power out there. So we had the power installation completed. This is a funny picture because they had to trench between the new, where the meter was gonna go to where the power would go for the trailers. And one of the things that I didn't realize is we had to have a tribal archaeologist on site to make sure if you're doing any digging or moving of soil, if they want to inspect soil and make sure you don't find anything of importance. And we didn't find anything of tribal importance, but we did find, if you see that flat gray spot on that trench, that is a gray cement concrete buried structure of some sort that no one knew was there or expected. So that was kind of unnerving. We think maybe it's an old septic tank, but we're not entirely sure. That was a Air Force site before. So the tribal archaeologists came out and looked at it and said, it's okay, go ahead. And so we were able to get the power installed. The Army Corps of Engineers, who is doing a soil removal project up there, they have contaminated soil they found from when it was an Air Force base, not base, but property. So they determined that they needed to have all of that space where our trailers were. So after we got the power installed, we had to go back and move all the trailers and the fencing off site. So that was a fun day, and just really grateful that we do have these two trailers that are so mobile, and I'm really good at moving them now, and I can move them really fast. So next slide. So that's what our site will look like, and you'll see the power not quite installed and not completed. And then on the same day that we got the transformer put in and the meter put in, we also moved the trailers out so that the Army Corps of Engineers would have all that space. So we are still on track to get those trailers back at the end of October, maybe the first week of November. And when we do, we will have power and hopefully we can get the Improve and the Encore sites operational again. But I have talked to the tribe, and the Army Corps of Engineers found a little bit more contaminated soil, so they've had to expand the scope, but they're still hopeful that they'll finish that project in October. Next slide.
Where are they stored?
Oh, go back. They are stored about a mile down the road off on the side of a road, and I purchased some wheel locks and some tongue locks so that they are secured there. They're both locked up. And Courtney goes up there every once in a while to check on them and make sure everything's fine.
Thank you.
So yeah, they should be fine. And then I just want to talk a little bit about the Bear Gulch fire smoke impacts that we experienced last month. So that was Port Angeles on September 16th and 17th. And you'll see that between 5 p.m. and 4 a.m., the air quality in Clallam County got, or at least Port Angeles area, was quite unhealthy, or what we would in the red, unhealthy. Actually, Tyson asked me what the difference between very unhealthy and unhealthy was, and I just looked at him yesterday because he said went to Wenatchee, and I said, well, it's very unhealthy. Obviously, it's very. And then that same day is the day that we were in Port Townsend fixing the monitor in Port Townsend, and I snapped that picture from the docks in downtown Port Townsend looking toward Port Angeles, and what you're seeing in the sky there is the smoke plume that was hanging out over Port Angeles, but not over Port Townsend. It was a very narrow band of smoke, so really kind of came right up over the mountains of Hurricane Ridge and really just set right down on Port Angeles. It was really interesting to look at on the satellite picture, and now that I think about it, I should have included that, but I didn't. So that was the Port Angeles smoke impact from Bear Gulch. Next slide. And then this was the one where I had to issue an air quality alert for Mason and Thurston County on September 19th. The smoke, we weren't expecting it to come this far south, and the smoke just rolled down from Bear Gulch and skyrocketed us from good to very unhealthy in about half an hour. So took us by surprise. Of course, this happened on Friday afternoon at 2:30 when most people had left. So I was sort of scrambling to get hold of Dan to help me issue this air quality alert and reach out to media and get the word out. But what's really interesting here is if you'll notice at the bottom, those monitors. So Shelton is the dashed one that went into very unhealthy. And then our ORCAA monitor here is the light gray dot that went into the red and kind of sat in the red through September 20th. And then downtown Olympia got into the red and kind of came down into yellow, but the solid line at the bottom was our Lacey College Street monitor.
Yeah.
So Olympia was literally sort of this mark of there was heavy smoke and then no smoke, which is why even though a lot of people in Thurston County, we got 12 calls in the 2 hours we had left in the afternoon from people concerned. And it rolled in so fast, a lot of people thought they were complaining about a neighbor or somebody burning. They didn't realize it was from the wildfire. So we actually got these complaint calls. Somebody's burning.
There was like a clearly defined line around the top of the basin too, where there wasn't any, like it was
Yeah,
very contained.
It was very interesting, interesting for us to have that on a Friday afternoon to deal with. But so I think that's my last slide.
I will note that I was working at home just west of Lacey at the time when Odell called me and said, we need to issue an air quality alert.
Crazy, yeah, right.
I was pretty sure she was either drunk or crazy because it was blue and perfect weather at my house.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say Nick's influence on keeping Lacey clean was the reason for that.
So, but thank you for taking my word on that, Dan. I was scrambling with ecology, like who do I email at National Weather Service? What do I say? It was my first air quality alert I've ever had to call. So first for me. I think that was my last slide. So
Awesome.
If there are any questions.
Questions for Odell? Great work. You're busy.
I was, yeah. It's a busy month, 2 kids.
Okay, Dan, bring us home.
All right. Well, a lot of what I had to cover has been covered. talked about the work with intercity transit and our multi-agency cooperative on the jungle and the homeless issues. I will note I'm also working with Quinn at OLIMAP, our nonprofit partner, as well as Kim at City of Olympia on developing some outreach materials just to try to address the burning of trash directly with the residents and make sure they're aware of the issues. And Quinn and OLIMAP have been really good about being our voices on the ground out there. So I wanted to make sure they got credit for that. And Kim Conduct has also been really great out there. We wrapped up our summer events with Harbor Days, the end of August, early September. Another great event for us. Excuse me. I will note I've been asked again to come out to Shelton High School and work with their science program in the high school, talking about air quality concerns and air quality impacts on communities later this fall. And I think, excuse me, I may have mentioned in the past the startup of a new cooperative communications group, so the South Sound Communicators Group. So my counterparts at public agencies and nonprofits throughout Thurston and parts of Mason County have got together to share resources, make sure we're sharing social media contacts and amplifying each other's messages. So that's everybody from the 3 cities, the county, several departments of the county, fire departments, the sheriff's office has been there, some nonprofits, colleges, South Sound Community College, and others. So we've met twice, and it's been a really good experience. We had the publisher of Jolt last time and put him on the hot seat and questioned him about how we can work together and make sure we get more accurate reporting as well as get more messaging out from our agencies. So he was actually very supportive and was honest and forthright about the challenges he's had and his new staff and how they're working. So I think it's a really good program. So if you have communications teams, feel free to point them my way, and we can see if we can't get them looped into that. I think we've got about 20 members right now. And then the other news we received on our wood stove grant. We do not have a new contract in place, but we did get word that we did get funding. Not everything we asked for, but that's typical. I think the last biennium I asked for 350,000 and I got 280. This time I asked for 430,000 and I got 314 essentially. So it's less than I asked for, but more than I got last biennium. So we'll be rolling that out in the next couple of weeks as soon as Ecology gets their grant software back up. And it is disheartening that they decided to replace their entire grant software system in the heart of issuing grants. And it was supposed to be out by today, or actually yesterday was the deadline, and now they're saying October 15th or 20th is their target. So I think I'll leave it at that. Again, on my communications report, you have some social media messaging you're free to use and share with your team and help us push out messaging. Talking mostly about outdoor burning and indoor burning. Need to make sure we are addressing our smoke as things get colder and people are looking for ways to stay warm and get rid of their yard waste.
All right, thank you, Dan. It's like the third story in as many weeks I've heard of a different state agency struggling to get money out for the new biennium. And we're 4 months in, so there's a lot of change. Any questions for Dan? Okay, thank you. Anything for the good of the order?
I have one.
Oh yeah, we actually are supposed to do board member roundtable and go to the order.
Oh,
So
good.
same thing, yeah.
Perfect. So, admittedly, I'm reading this right now, so I could have some details, missing, but I'm looking at an email that came in from our assistant county manager last week about extending the burn ban in Thurston County. until DNR adjusts their burn ban status down from high. And or emergency services director and fire chiefs deem local conditions warrant sunsetting of this year's burn ban. And that was received last week. So I know earlier we said it would be probably lifted on Friday, but it sounds like it may be extended beyond Friday.
That's great if they do. It gives, the theory that I have from the burning thing, the longer they extend it, the drier the material will get. So when they do burn it, it's gonna burn cleaner. So, and so, that's great. And of course, fire danger will be less at that time too. I know Dan communicates with them real well. He kind of is our ears and tells us when they're going to open it. So then we're ready for complaints and permits to go in. So.
Perfect.
Yeah,
maybe
so
longer.
I actually had conversations via email yesterday with Brett Burris and Ben Miller Todd about this, and they're looking at the 10th, essentially every Friday they were going to reevaluate, and we're leaning towards ending their fire safety ban on Friday, since the DNR fire risk has dropped to moderate in Thurston County. So
Great. Thank you for that. Other updates or good of the order items? There's a couple board members left. Okay, not seeing any. I just really wanted to say thank you to the staff team for a high quality meeting. This was a really good one. And we did it in 90 minutes. So thank you for that. And thanks for all the great work that you do. So
Thank you.
with that, we are adjourned. Take care, everyone.